Michael Ruby. I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Illinois, studying history and secondary education.
So I guess like one of my questions was like why did you choose to come to Allen Hall? Okay, so why did you choose to stay at Newton Hall?
Stay or like initially come here?
Me, I lived in Bar, and then all of my friends that I met, a lot of my friends lived here, so I just moved here.
Okay.
I'm also an RA at Allen Hall, and so that got me thinking about where students live on campus, where they come from, but also why they choose to live in certain residence halls in the first place. So I argue in my project that students self-segregate based on race and ethnicity and class into different residence halls and living learning communities, which are just places for students to connect with similar interests. Even within residence halls, students self-segregate.
I don't know if I necessarily hear perceptions about how, or I guess why students choose residence halls. I think there are definitely like stereotypes about the students in each residence hall. I mean, around campus, Allen is definitely known to be like the super artsy dorm.
Do you hear perceptions about why students live in certain halls?
Yeah, I mean, each hall definitely has its own type of personality. You know, like ISR is for the engineers. I guess the Ike is generally considered like a more social, party-ish type of like dorm and area. But yeah, each dorm definitely has its own personality, and I guess people gravitate to each dorm based on that.
Do you hear stereotypes around campus as to why students live in certain residence halls?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So I was inspired by some of the interviews that I had in my RA job, but I was also inspired by the teachings of Horace Mann and John Dewey. Horace Mann believed in this idea of the common school as a place where students could learn across differences and come together. So if you have a school and you might have little houses around the neighborhood, students would come together. It wouldn't be a private education, but a public education. Students would learn across differences, and schools would be roughly equal across regions. And so this idea kind of projects onto the University of Illinois. Does the University of Illinois achieve a similar goal of reaching out to students and having students come together to learn together? And this also relates to John Dewey, who believed in learning together, child and curriculum, and in a sense, in a public education. So these are the questions and issues that I wanted to tackle in my project. I'm going to look at data in the next section from the University Housing website. Okay, so here's a list of the residence halls in order of most expensive to least expensive for cost, and the most expensive are going to be darker in shade, and the least expensive lighter in shade. You might notice a column here labeled diverse. What that means is the likelihood that a resident, if they're living in a room with two people, would live with someone that is of a different race or ethnicity as them. And so I find these numbers a little bit misleading, because if you look at a place like Wardall Hall, the living learning community there on floors 5 through 8, they boast a 70% diversity rate, but there's only 3 African American students and 16 Hispanic students out of 188 on those floors. And a similar trend exists for a place like Nugent Hall. In their living learning community, there's only 8 African American students and 22 Hispanic students out of 224. Another troubling trend that I found was when you rank in order of most representation to least representation by ethnicity. So what I mean by that is looking at the top, these residence halls for Hispanic students have the most representation of Hispanic students. And you notice the color coding, they're also the cheapest. And they have the least representation in some of the nicest dorms. A similar trend exists for African American students, with one outlier, Bousfield. But by and large, most dorms that have the greatest representation of African American students are also some of the cheapest. The opposite trend seems to exist for Asian students, where many of them live in some of the nicest residence halls, or they have greatest representation in the nicest residence halls, the most expensive ones. White students seem to have the best of both worlds in a sense. Many of them live in some of the nicest residence halls. Some of them don't. The reason for this, I think, is up for debate, but one possible reason is that Taft Van Dorn is often associated, as is Sheldon, with being party dorms or having more of a white culture, to put it bluntly. And so those residence halls might attract white students, even though they're not the nicest, even though they don't have air conditioning or a living learning community in them.
My ultimate goal is to represent where students live on campus spatially using geographic information sciences. So here's a map of the campus. Highlighted in blue are the residence halls. What I would like to do for my final project is to have maybe a pie chart come out of each residence hall with the so-called diversity of the residence hall and compare that with the actual numbers or percentages of students based on their ethnicity.
Yes, perceptions and people's ideas and their own personalities and beliefs probably play a big role in where students live on campus, but at least an equally important role to me, and based on the data that I found, is money. It costs different amounts of money to live in different residence halls, and that might limit students from living in certain residence halls. And I think that's a real shame, not only because certain residence halls have more benefits like air conditioning and living learning communities, but may cost more. It's also a shame because students have, students from all races and socioeconomic backgrounds have fewer opportunities to learn together and to really grow, not only as students, which you can do in the classroom, but also as people. I'm really excited to continue working on this project in the future and to continue to think about what a public education is at a university like ours. So thanks for listening so much. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.